Again, welcome. Today we're talking about local outdoor air quality. So Megan with the PCA is going to give us an overview of what that means in your communities, and then we'll hear from Matt and Eric at the PCA as well about air quality index and other tools. Jenni from Minneapolis about their green cost share program and air sensor project. And then Fire Marshal Cary Smith from St. Louis Park about their backyard fire permit ordinances, or I guess it's just an ordinance. And finally, electric lawn equipment examples from Sam at the PCA, and then some time for Q&A. For those of you who do have access to the chat, feel free to post in questions, share comments, experience your own experiences, anything like that. If you don't have access to the chat or would rather speak, just use the raise hand feature under the reactions button at the top. And you should be able to unmute yourself with that as well. So we're pretty informal here and excited to get going. So we're going to kick things off with Megan. So I'll go ahead and let you introduce yourself and get us started.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you all for being here today. This is great. I think it's been many years in the in the making. So I am super grateful for everyone who has joined us today. So I'm Megan Kuhl-Stennes. I use she, her pronouns. I work at the MPCA. I am actually in transition with jobs. So I'm working now as an air policy planner, but I previously worked a lot in voluntary air pollution reduction. And so that's the role where I worked with GreenStep cities. And so they'll be filling my position, but I am here until then. So you can go to the next slide. So I think as many of you in our breakout groups probably started talking about some of these sources of air pollution. We're not, so the industrial facilities, power plant generations, those we consider point sources. We're probably not going to talk a whole lot about those today. As cities, you have a little bit of influence over that, probably more so in zoning, but I think a lot of the other areas, cities really can have a really big impact. And so, especially where MPCA doesn't have a whole lot of regulatory authority. So, but other sources of air pollutions, other places have air permits like hospitals. But then the big things we're going to talk a lot about today, the traffic, the diesel vehicles, wood burning, the indoor wood heaters and outdoor wood burning, backyard fires, gas-powered lawn equipment, and then small businesses like gas stations, dry cleaners, auto body shops can really have a significant local impact, especially on air quality. You can go to the next slide. So when we talk about then improving your local air quality, we're going to talk about reducing these pollutants. And we're talking primarily about criteria pollutants, which the EPA sets health rules around. But even working on criteria pollutant reduction often has really excellent greenhouse gas reduction co-benefits is the way we kind of talk about them and measure them. So even as you're thinking about if your city or program has a lot of focus on climate change or greenhouse gas reduction, there's a good chance there might be some other good air quality benefits as well. And so I kind of just listed some areas where air pollution can be reduced kind of on a voluntary side. So, obviously conserving energy makes a big difference. I don't think I realized even when I started that job that, all of our natural gas furnaces put out a little bit of nitrogen dioxide out of each of our houses. So, when you insulate your house, you have certainly greenhouse gas benefits, but you also are reducing additional air pollution as well. Also, installing renewables has big impacts. Transportation, any focus on active transport and EVs can have a significant impact on air pollution. And then kind of we get into a lot of the stuff that people may not think about as much, but lawn equipment, changing over from gas-powered lawn equipment to electric or manual can be really impactful. Working with small businesses, changing out, high VOC solvents or paints and stuff like that to aqueous solvents and paints. And then reducing wood smoke, both from those heating devices and recreational fires. You can go to the next slide. I listed these mostly for the sharing at the end, so you could easily access them right from the PowerPoint. But just a quick overview. Well, I'll talk about them in each slide. But we have very specific best practices focused on helping improve local air quality. It's best practice 23. You can go to the next slide. And just kind of an overview of kind of what these have been edited recently. So if you haven't seen them lately, it would be a good thing to check out. We've kind of kept them, each of them kind of on the same guidelines. So 1 star is really probably focused mostly on education. 2 stars is often an action a city can take. It might involve some small policy change or a little bit of money. And then 3 stars is kind of bigger financial incentives or financial inputs or larger policy changes like ordinances. And Sam will talk about this more later today, so we'll get into action steps around this later, but the 23.1 is around small engines. I just learned about go-karts as another one to keep in mind, very similar, but not every city necessarily has a go-kart track either, but same vein, and they can be swapped to electric too. You can go to the next slide. 23.2 is about wood burning, and this can have a lot of different areas, and Carrie will talk a little bit about St. Louis Parks recreational fire ordinance, but there's a lot we can do, and my previous focus was a lot on wood burning, so if there's ever any connection folks need, please feel free to reach out. Here's where, possibly maybe in rural, maybe in urban, there we have model ordinance language around what the picture is an outdoor wood boiler. We have a lot of them in Minnesota. They actually make them several of them here, but making sure they're EPA certified, and then making sure that people just burn seasoned dry wood in them is really important as well. And so there can be certain fairly easy ordinances that people can institute around that. So lots more, we can talk more about that later, but I just wanted to highlight that best practice. You can go to the next one. 23.3 is a lot about anti-idling, the anti-tampering. So this one has a lot there. But basically, if you think about a campaign around anti-idling, sometimes this can be around schools or other places where trucks idle. What the picture is an APU, an auxiliary power unit, so that a truck doesn't have to idle, because that can really significantly reduce air pollution. A lot of times that's an action of a city. You might have a truck that has to idle, and you as the city can install city or tribal nation can install the APUs on them or change out diesel vehicles, that kind of thing. And then I just did want to say something about, we are looking at 23.4, where we would look at reducing toxic products, like reducing VOC paints. We've had a big thing around TCE lately, and TCE still exists in brake cleaner that you can get off the shelf at AutoZone. So things like that, and we'll follow those similar star levels. We're working on the implementation resources and specific examples right now. MinTap, someone from MinTap will be joining us at some point. I think at the end for sure. So if you have questions, but MinTap can really be a resource if this is something you're looking into immediately. And then 23.5, oh yes, Annie, yes. I was gonna even talk about St. Louis Park. Yes, St. Louis Park would be a great example to talk about idle free. So thank you for that link. I appreciate it. And if I have a moment, maybe you can jump in, and if you want to say anything about that, I'm almost done here. But 23.5 is a little bit about EV infrastructure. I'm not even going to talk about this at all because there's a December 7th workshop on EV smart communities. But knowing that the infrastructure here is really can really impact local air quality as well. And then can you go to the next slide? So we've also, this is our map of areas of concern for environmental justice in Minnesota. And this is where, it's something to consider, especially in terms of areas of concern for environmental justice are BIPOC communities, tribal areas, or low-income communities. You can see the actual qualifications down there, but there are also areas of historic disinvestment. So, investing in some cleaner air, electric lawn equipment, or some other air pollution, something that's going to help clean the air in areas of concern for environmental justice can really have a big impact. And as GreenStep cities and tribal nations, definitely there's been a focus a lot more on equity. And this is one of the ways where if you're considering, maybe one part of your city is an area of concern for environmental justice and the other isn't, maybe you're going to focus in that area of concern for environmental justice as a priority. Is something to think about. We'll talk about this a little bit. Eric will talk a little bit more about this as well. You can go to the next slide. Because in a similar vein, we don't all breathe the same air. And so communities are more likely to be near higher levels of air pollution, communities of color and indigenous and low-income communities. And so this is another reason why it's really important to consider this for these areas of concern for environmental justice, because it will have a bigger impact on people who are already potentially breathing worse air than the rest of the state. Thank you for putting that link in there. I appreciate it. Yeah, so thank you for joining us. This is exciting for me, and yeah, I don't know if Annie, did you want to say something real quickly about St. Louis Park?
Sure. So just a little bit of background here. Sorry, I'll flip my camera on too. We started this campaign because of this really awesome group of middle schoolers who had to make climate action projects for the end of their 6th grade science presentations. And they decided to focus on idling and actually did an idling audit of the middle school parking lot. And so I think just that can help serve as some inspiration, especially kind of doing some citizen science out there. They were literally out there tracking how long parents were idling for and how many cars were idling each day over the course of like a week, I think. And so they've really been at the forefront of this. And we also got Park Nicollet involved too, thinking about it from a medical and health side of things. And that picture I sent in the chat are signs that we're now partnering with schools to put in their parking lots. And some signs will also go up in city sites where idling is common, like the rec center and some other parks and locations like that. But it's actually my colleague Ellie who has done the bulk of this work. And so, yeah, if anyone has any questions or wants to kind of follow us in this and copy it in your city, we are happy to help with that. Thanks for letting me speak to it.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. I appreciate that. Yes, agreed. Super fantastic. Well, cool. Well, I will turn it over to Matt now, right? I think that's next.
Yep.
And thank you for being here, Matt. I'll let you take it away.
No problem. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Sweet. So, good morning, everybody. My name is Matt Taraldsen. My pronouns are he, him. I'm a meteorologist at MPCA, and I do air quality index forecasting. Um, we do have a handful of meteorologists at PCA. Not everyone knows we exist, but we're there. We do air quality forecasting every day, and then we issue air quality alerts as needed. So let's see if I can get my screen to keep going. Here we go. So what we actually forecast every day is ground level ozone and particulate matter PM2.5. There's a bunch of other criteria pollutants that EPA has that will do modeling for facilities and things like that, more regulatory modeling for. But the air quality index forecasting is basically based off of these two, the ozone and PM2.5. And so that's what we're looking at every day. That's what we're forecasting. And we standardize everything all the concentrations of both pollutants to an air quality index so that people don't have to worry about the units or anything like that. They can just understand the AQI, and if it goes above 100, we issue an alert. I know a lot of people probably already know quite a bit about this process and what we forecast, but for those who are new and maybe don't know, ozone basically happens in the warm season, although it's becoming more common to get it a little bit outside of summer when we get these freak warm days. But May through July is usually our peak season for ozone, and ozone basically requires sunlight, strong solar radiation, to convert VOCs or these volatile organic compounds from cities predominantly converted over to ozone, and then you get ozone at the surface. Here in Minnesota, the primary area we see ozone impacts are actually the suburbs, just in the Twin Cities metro, so just outside of Minneapolis, St. Paul proper. And that's usually when we see and where we see the highest ozone impacts, right along I-94 up to St. Cloud. On the particulate matter side, PM2.5, we look at PM2.5, which is smaller than 2.5 microns, and this image here shows how big it is compared to a piece of sand and then a human hair. And so PM2.5 is extremely small. It gets into people's lungs. It causes cardiopulmonary symptoms and issues, and so that's what we forecast for. Our two big areas we see PM2.5 spikes are fires in the summer in particular, and in the winter, we get a secondary peak when we get these really cold, stagnant air masses that kind of push everything down to the surface. And so those are our two big PM days that we see, PM events that we forecast for. So some of the sources of fine particle pollution, as we refer to it, here in Minnesota, wildfire smoke has been predominantly the major impact. Last year in particular was insane, record-breaking. We see it some during prescribed fires, although we're usually in the loop that something's going to happen, and they try to do it on days where there's good mixing and things like that. Outdoor wood burning on a quiet summer night, we always see recreational fires bump up the air sensors. We've had blowing dust a couple of years. Even this year, we've had a couple of events, December of 2021, that we had blowing dust, and then earlier this year, blowing dust with severe thunderstorms. And then special events, things like industrial fires, things like that, will also have air quality impacts, and we monitor those. And of course, no way to forecast those. Those are kind of event driven, and we respond to them as they occur. So a little bit about the air quality index. And so because ozone and PM2.5 are in two different scales, micrograms versus parts per billion, we standardize everything to an air quality index, and that lets kind of people hone in on the numbers. So if it goes greater than 100, 101 or higher, that's when we'll issue an air quality alert. And at that level, it becomes unhealthy for sensitive individuals. Our air quality, until 2021, our air quality events that we would have, we would issue alerts were predominantly in that orange category. And then last year, we had all the gambits all the way up to hazardous, which is the first time that we've seen across a large swath of Minnesota. So yeah, that's how the AQI is set up. And again, anything orange or higher, we issue an alert for from PCA. So the question we get asked a lot is, well, how exactly do you forecast the air quality? And so really what we're looking at is we're forecasting the meteorology and then applying what we know about atmospheric chemistry to the meteorological setup to kind of get an idea of where the air quality index is going to go. And this is kind of a tricky process because meteorology is full of its own errors and issues. And then on top of that, you throw in atmospheric chemistry issues. And so things that we think are there, we can't really, directly measure. Things like how ozone forms, there's no way to really predict where the VOCs are. So we have to look at atmospheric setups. And so That's the tricky aspect of it. And then on top of that, you have the fact that people can and do change air quality. So those outdoor fires at night bump up the air quality. We've noticed that when we do issue alerts and we tell people, don't travel, things like that, the air quality will actually come in a little bit lower than what our models would have. And so uh, it goes both ways, and it can be a very challenging thing to try to anticipate. In terms of the tools we use the standard weather types of models, weather balloon data. Satellite data has become extremely helpful. Satellites in the IR frequency, the infrared frequency, can actually detect the heat signatures of fires, and so we can watch for those prescribed fires, or watch up in Canada and see how active fires are and get an idea of what's going on. And then in-house, we have our own AI model, artificial intelligence model. We affectionately call it Dr. Robot, but basically it goes back and looks at all of the different weather events of the past and the AQI numbers that came from it, and tries to give us kind of a guideline of where things might be going. In terms of what Dr. Robot actually does, it's written in Python. We run it, it does some perturbations, and so we basically spits out a range of options. And so it's a really handy tool. We put in every year, we put in more data into it, but it can be kind of tricky because it assumes that our climate's at a steady state. And as we get more of these infrequent, or what at the time record-breaking events, it kind of stresses what the AI model can handle. So that's a challenge, but it is something that we really enjoy using. We use every day in tandem with the big models from the National Weather Service. In terms of what that tool looks like, every day we get a spit out, and you can see on the bottom here, these are all the different permutations of that model, along with NOAA's CMAQ model. And so we get a nice plot that we put in Tableau and then make a nice map of it, and it kind of shows the spikes. And so in this case, you can see green all along. But basically, it kind of gives us the buffers of where we're looking at in terms of the air quality forecast. And from there, it goes down to forecaster judgment about what numbers you actually put out to the public. Again, the air quality index categories, orange and higher is when we issue an alert. And it's always good to mention that the air quality index standards are for 24 hours. And so midnight to midnight is when we look at the data. And if it's going to be orange for a majority of those days, we'll issue an alert. There's been some days where the AQI over 24 hours has been a little below orange. But if we get into peaks where especially you get to the red for a couple hours and then orange for a majority of the hours, we'll still issue an alert, even though it technically doesn't meet it, just because we anticipate that there'll be impacts. And from what we've heard from our stakeholders and seen on social media, the people tend to notice that, especially when there's smoke in there and they can smell it. So either that 24 hours, or if, again, a multitude of hours above that orange level, we'll issue an alert for. In terms of how the alerts go out, we traditionally just put out a map and then kind of put everything through the map. Starting in 2021, we've really been hitting social media hard. And so we have our Twitter handle, MPCA_AQI. We try to put out information in there. So this is an example from last year. We had smoke that pooled across Lake Superior and then got pushed into the St. Louis River Valley. I'm from Duluth, so I was watching this and I was like, oh no, this is going to be bad. But high impact event for Duluth. But it was kind of weird because it was all being driven by the lake recirculation. And so we're trying to illustrate what's going on. Again, more than we can put in a text alert, put these maps out and kind of give more information. And so even sub-alert events we will mention on our Twitter account will kind of give more information. And so above all else, we're trying to push people to keep an eye on that, because that's kind of the way we convey information besides our forecast discussions and our alert products. Starting last year, we also started to incorporate the AQI color onto the map. This kind of came out of the notion what I talked about earlier. We've traditionally only had orange in the state, but then last summer, late in July last summer, we had a very high impact event, and we knew it was going to be bad. And so we, as a team, kind of sat down and decided to add the colors to the map. Experimentally at first, but the feedback we got, especially from our media partners, was really overwhelmingly positive. So we're going to keep that going forward. And so if it's beyond orange, if it's higher, red, purple, we'll put that in there, and then we'll also include fires. So in this example here, we had the Greenwood fire, which was the major contributor, and then the Welt fire, which was a secondary contributor to the smoke last summer. Sending out that information, we send things out in an air quality alert. This is what the text product looks like when we send it to the Weather Service, and then the maps go out to the media. And so here's an example from a Twin Cities media station here showing that map color put in. and basically kind of heightens the way we can communicate what's going on. When you get to these reds or higher event, these are the things that people definitely notice. And so we're trying to do our best to really convey that that's going to happen and put out the information. Like I said, the feedback we've gotten from our media partners who have to carry our message after we issue an alert has been very positive on this. And we're going to continue doing that. We also have the air quality or AirNow map or AirNow app rather that we actually built in-house at MPCA. We'll send out a push notification if there is an air quality alert. We send out press releases and viral flash emails, and then we talk to MnDOT to get the signs lit up for across all the highways in the alert area. Behind the scenes, our team also handles media inquiries, and usually those are just a couple. But last summer was insane. We did like 45 of them or something. So there's a picture of me on TV. But even the Washington Post interviewed us, which was crazy. A lot of interest in the smoke last summer, and so we do that behind the scenes too, in addition to forecasting, and that could be a lot of work. But we enjoy doing it, and it's important to get our message out, so we have a consistent forecast out for the public. In terms of 2021, this is how everything kind of settled down, and so last year by far was the busiest year we've ever had. We had all these alerts. 20 air quality alerts, 6 was our previous record. Some parts of northern Minnesota were under an alert for almost 30 days straight. Just between the Canadian fires and then the local Greenwood fire, just a lot of smoke that sat across northern Minnesota and did not move. It was also the first time we actually had a multi-day alert for the entire state. And so it was a very busy season. And then, of course, it juxtaposes with what happened this year, which is nothing. In terms of what 2021 looked like in terms of maps we issued, we started out with those basic maps, and by the end of July, we realized that the orange isn't going to cut it anymore, so we added in the reds and the purples. And then as we went back to just kind of these orange impact events, rolled it back a little bit just to the confined area around the Greenwood fire. So 2022 rolls around. We had our busiest season last year, and this screen is blank on purpose. We haven't had anything in 2022, which has been very weird too. To go from 20 alerts last year to nothing this year, and not even really anything close, has been something. We're always watching, we're always forecasting, but so far we've only had one day that got close with ozone, and that's been it in terms of impact. So very quiet this year, but we're still around, still watching, but we don't want to send out alerts unless we have to. In terms of how the air quality alert process goes, we are the ones at PCA that issue that, but we work with the Department of Health to get our wording correct, our impacts correct. We talk to MnDOT, again, we light up all the screens, and then we send all the information out to the Weather Service to actually issue that formal air quality alert that'll push through a lot of weather apps. But really, we wanted to highlight that this isn't just PCA doing this. This is, tribal nations, cities, other entities around the state of Minnesota are all involved in this. And then, of course, our media partners are invaluable. Once we get that alert out, people will hear about bad weather and turn on the TV. They don't listen to us anymore. And so really wanted to highlight that this is a collaborative event, and we're here to help people. And if you ever have questions with air quality, we're around to help guide whatever decisions you need to make and give you more information. In terms of our AQI forecast locations, these are our main forecast locations, the Twin Cities and Rochester. We do phone messages for them. We have sensors across the state, and these are the actual locations we use right now. We do point forecasts. In the future, talk a little bit about our outreach. We do things like the state fair. I've been doing a lot of emergency management meetings, just kind of getting our word out to the emergency management community that, hey, we exist, and if there's ever some sort of air quality event, we're happy to help. But we do a lot of outreach. Again, it's important to get the message out. And some pictures from the state fair. Our former supervisor loved the state fair, so we're always there doing stuff. In terms of where we're going into the future, so the first over here on the right, we've been working with NASA. We meet with them every couple of weeks, and they're putting up a new sensor that's going to be able to let us track ground level pollution much more efficiently. And so we were one of the early adopters of that, and that's been really cool technology that's coming online that'll help. We've also been looking at upgrading our forecasts away from those points that we had on the map before to a zone-based, full map, GIS-based forecast. And that's something we're actively working on right now, targeting for 2023. But basically, it'll kind of get us away from these individual points, but instead lets us communicate over a wider area for what the impacts will be. And this is just kind of a quick and dirty example I put together as a proof of concept. Our daily air quality forecasts, again, the Minnesota Air app has that information, and then MPCA, AQI. Really want to push people to that. We update that. We're always monitoring that. That's kind of the way we can get our information out more efficiently than just either the map or the discussion or the alert text product. So with that, questions are welcome. There's going to be a formal Q&A session a little bit later. But again, I thank everyone for your time. Here's all of our information. If there is any questions, you can email me. Otherwise, we have an AQI team email that will ping all of us if people have questions, and then we have a phone number too. So again, wanted to iterate for your jurisdictions, if there's ever questions about how bad the air quality is going to be rather, or how much of an impact there's going to be, we're always there to help. We're absolutely happy to do it. All of us are very driven by that. And so, yeah, just wanted to put that out there, and thank you everyone for your time.
Thanks, Matt. There was one quick question maybe you can address as Eric's getting his slides up, but
Okay.
Annie asked, do you think Minnesotans are more generally aware or concerned of air quality issues since the summer of 2021?
Anecdotally, 100% yes. At the state fair for 2021, people would come by and be like, what do you do? And we would kind of explain, like, oh, I didn't know you guys did that. Last year and then this year at the state fair, we had a lot of people come by and be like, so what happened with all that smoke? And like, they actually, knew we existed, knew there was an air quality alert, knew the Canadian fires, and people actually had some really interesting questions about, like, well, why did the Canadians let the fires burn and things like that? And so, yeah, big uptick. Our social media metrics ballooned. And then, well, we also crashed the MPCA website 3 times too with air quality alerts. We issued stuff and it killed everything. And so, yeah, after 2021, people are much more aware, and they're definitely been tuning in a lot more. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thanks, Matt. Yeah, we'll have time for more questions kind of after Eric's done as well, because this really feeds right into it. So, Eric Wilcox Freeburg is here, and Eric, take it away.
Hi. Can you see my slides? Are they showing up?
We can. Yes.
Awesome. Great. So I'm going to talk a little bit about statewide modeling efforts to associate air pollution scores to census block groups within the state. Wrong screen. I'm pushing arrow buttons. Here we go. So as sort of like a review to Megan's earlier slide, when you look at this picture, what sorts of air emissions sources do you see here? And you don't have to answer, and you don't have to type in a chat, but it's like I like this slide a lot because it really gets you thinking about how many places or how many sources there actually are when you just take a quick snapshot of where you live. So facilities across Minnesota in the PCA permits approximately 2,000 facilities for air emissions, but only about 3% of those have risk assessments associated with those permits. A lot of those permits are written by rule or by federal statute, those types of things. So the ones that we do have risk assessments on, we do full modelings. So we know site-specific contributions to risk. So what do we do with the other 97% of facilities that are permitted? Well, we have an air emissions inventory program at the PCA where we take their emissions, put them into a large inventory, and then we use statewide modeling in my unit to do a statewide assessment of risk using those emission inventory. We have traffic inventory, land use inventory, census data, wood surveys, and then all those get placed into an air modeling model with dispersion coefficients calculated for each pollutant. Depending on some pollutants will move through the atmosphere differently. Buildings have impacts on how those disperse as well, wind direction, meteorology. All those get funneled into this statewide model. Then we also do media modeling. So multimedia risk, do we have deposition to surface, soil, water, etc. And then we also use risk models to calculate exposure either directly or multi-pathway. And then we apply toxicity values to those exposures so that we can associate generalized risk, total risk. So we have the newest data available is the 2017 EI as well as our census. So we put all of that together, and that's new as of this summer. And I want to just give you a little tour of what this website is capable of, because we use it for a lot of programs at the PCA. Can you see the map? Awesome. So as you can see, this website, and it's been shared a couple times, which is awesome, has several different tabs that have different layers of data being called out. The one that I'm talking about right now is this air pollution score one. So if you click on that, you can get a view of air pollution scores overlaid with EJ areas of concern throughout the entire state. So if you have a particular interest, and I did this morning when we were talking about, you know, what are the sources of air pollution in your community, you can zoom all the way in, you can click on a particular census block, and I'm probably doxing myself right now, but as you can see in my area, PM 2.5 is the highest pollutant. We also have contributing emission sources, so traffic, airports, airport emissions, and then permitted facilities. So in my area, it's mostly traffic. And the really cool thing about this is you can also get demographic information. So you can click over here, you can see, you know, the demographic profile of your particular block group. And then for the entire census tract. So there's all sorts of superfluous data that kind of pops up here too. So you can see all the MPCA sites in these orange dots. You can click on those and find out exactly what it is. So these have emissions inventory data associated with them. So here's Jiming School, is a Mandarin immersion school just down the street from me, which is pretty sweet. But yeah, you can zoom in and out. You can look all across the state. There's a search tool. But importantly, you can also overlay with EJ areas. So you can look in, this is an environmental area of area of concern for environmental justice. And you can see it's traffic, permitted facilities. So another thing you can do is drill down into what are the permitted facilities in the area. Like I was saying, you can click on these dots, and then you can use this arrow tool to look at other data within the census tract. Let's see, what else was I going to talk about here?
What's the significance of the number?
Oh, thank you. Yes. So our air quality index score, this pollution score, anytime it's over 1, that sort of triggers us to think about the big metric is that there's a risk of 1.5 additional cancers per 100,000 population, chronic risk. So the higher this number, the higher the air pollution risk associated with, in this case, cancer per 100,000. We also feed in other risk associated too. So if there's a particularly high acute risk, that's in this as well. I'm trying to think of a good example where I could scroll around, but yeah, there's just a ton of data. So maybe I can talk about what we do with this at the PCA a little bit. Let's see, where did this go? Slides, there they are. So one thing we do with this state modeled data is we've developed a point source tool to look for facilities that model above risk guidelines, so that 1.0 per 100,000. So I'll click into that. I think it's already loaded, but I'll load it again.
This one, though, just so folks know, is not a public.
Oh,
tool.
true. Yes. We have an internal group that we're working with facilities to voluntarily reduce their emissions. So because their permits allow them to emit at these levels, we're working with them closely to get voluntary reductions. So we use this data internally to look at specific facilities, and then we engage those facilities specifically in an attempt to bring down overall overall risk in the areas that these major players are concerned. Let's see, what else do I have here? And then we also prioritize them using this tool. I believe this is also internal, actually, now that I'm thinking about it. But this is another tool that we use internally to prioritize facilities that we want to target for additional risk reduction. So we can look at specific counties and then specific block groups. So
And
you
if
can
folks
see.
would have,
Sorry, go ahead.
Eric,
No, go ahead.
If folks would have questions about their particular city around the sources, you would be welcome to contact Eric.
Yeah,
Or
absolutely.
anyone who can kind of direct you if you wanted more detailed information. But I think that air pollution score sometimes can pique interest. And then if you really want to kind of dive into your area, this can be an opportunity for that as well.
Right, and this view that I was showing of the map, this is really a graphical user interface over our extensive data set. So if you have data questions about your block group or your city or your county, we can collate all that information together and have a report for your particular area. Yeah, lots of data here. It's a wealth of information, and we're just scratching the surface of what we can do with this statewide modeling effort. Yeah. So lots of cool tools. Let's see. Go back to my presentation. I don't know why it keeps closing. That's interesting. I guess it was going to be just a short, quick tour. I was trying to leave some time for questions, so I don't know if we have to move on now and we can do a QA later, or what's best.
No, we have a little bit of time for some Q&A, and I'll kick it off with Sean's question in the chat, mostly because I think I know the answer to it. Does your MPCA map also include a layer for asthma rates in census tracts too? It says cancer, heart disease, and asthma are all related to air pollution.
Mm-hmm. I don't believe we have that data.
But the health department does.
Yeah.
And I will try and find that. They've been trying to get their data more available as well. And so I will try and find that, Sean, for you and try and drop that in the chat too. It might be after our Q&A is over, just so I can actually look for it. There's another chat or another question. Interested in how to attribute asthma related to indoor versus outdoor air, and/or point source or non-point. Do you have any thoughts on that, Eric?
That's, I think, a very difficult question. I would say you'd probably need some indoor monitoring as well as the outdoor modeling, perhaps modeled data, but also monitoring. I think this would probably be a really great research question. Yeah, that's a tough one. I'm not sure our data set can answer that question right now. That's a very non-committal answer. Sorry about that, but yeah, that's something that I have interest in personally. So I would be more than happy to take a look around the data sets that we do have and try to make those connections, at least, especially when we can plug into the Department of Health information.
Yeah, Megan, I wonder, this is something that took me a while to understand the relationship or the roles that the PCA, the Pollution Control Agency, has around air quality and the Department of Health has around air quality. Can you just give a quick, brief overview of that?
And Matt and/or Eric, if you have any additional thoughts, I can give the super quick and dirty. Is like MPCA is outdoor air, and MDH or Department of Health has at least some influence over indoor air. So we don't really do a whole lot of indoor air, but the health department does. in various ways. So, but we also kind of recognize that, you know, what is outside comes inside. And so we certainly want to reduce, you know, as much air pollutants as we can in outside, so that we, yes, Sean, you very well might have found it. But Eric or Matt, if you have any additional thoughts to add to that.
No, that's a great distinction between our, various ability to regulate. I would say that we depend on the Department of Health to develop health benchmarks. And so when we do these risk models, we're using health department risk benchmarks to associate risk. So we do lean pretty heavily on the Department of Health for those risk values, and then the information that we provide for protective action.
Yes. I'm going to move to Annie's question just so we keep having, this is great discussion. I really appreciate it. Annie asked, do you have any examples as how cities might have used this data in outreach or special programs? I think Matt, maybe that's more your or I can help too, but
I don't have any personal examples, I don't think. We do have partnerships with cities, and I think Jenni will talk a little bit about that maybe next. Yeah, I'm not sure if Jenni has used MinRisk data in the past to do this to do our work together, but this is a rich data set that we're always looking to shop around and talk to cities and get their feedback, and also help them with their programmatic work as well. So we're always open for these types of partnerships.
And additionally, kind of, I think more and more cities are using the air quality index to educate a little bit about like what does that mean, and what can be impacted. So at least I have seen some ordinances or policies, maybe is what the better, but maybe you city and tribal nation folks would be better off telling me, but like you written right into the recreational fire ordinance, you know, it says no fires on air quality, on bad air quality days. So that can be one way, not necessarily in terms of outreach, but then you may use, you know, a bad air quality day to say, hey, it says in our ordinance that you can't have a backyard fire today because it's a backyard, or because it's a bad air quality day, or something like that. So there can be a lot of ways where these things can talk to each other, I guess, or you can integrate different factors into it. I think Jenni will also talk a little bit about how they've potentially been using the air pollution score. I can't quite remember what Jenni, but right. But I can let her talk about that. Other questions? We have about 1 more minute left. I know Matt has to head out, so to a very fancy conference in DC. So he'll be leaving us here. If anyone had any last questions around the AQI, definitely want to get those in right now. But any other questions? Otherwise, we will start to move on, because I think it's probably prepped very well for the city of Minneapolis to take over. So. Yes, thanks, Sean, for putting all those links in. There's some great resources in there for sure. And definitely, I'm sure Jenni can talk a little bit more about what's at Minneapolis. So I will let you take it away, Jenni. Thanks so much for being here today.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me. Can you see my slide? Wonderful. Okay. And yes, thank you for including those links, Sean. Just to note, the city of Minneapolis is doing a lot of work on our website right now. everything is under revision. So, and that page that you included on air quality is my page, and it's not live yet, the information that I provided. So that's, so what you're looking at is very disappointing. I'll just say that. But our website's undergoing a lot of revisions. All right, so I'm here today. My name is Jenni Lansing. I'm the Senior Environmental Research Analyst with the Minneapolis Health Department. And I'm going to talk about two pieces of our work, the Community Air Monitoring Project and the Green Cost Share Program. And you'll have to excuse me, my voice is a little rough right today. So our Community Air Monitoring Project, this is a project that we started a year ago in Minneapolis, and we started it because we had some funding available through the ARPA funding, the Resource Recovery funding. We received some money that went into our Healthy Homes and Asthma program, and that freed up a little bit of general funds for us. And we decided to apply that money to a community air monitoring project in Minneapolis. And we did that in response to community concerns about what the air quality is like, where, directly where they, live, work, play, schools and things like that. So when we started this project a year ago, we really wanted this project to be in collaboration, in partnership with the communities in Minneapolis. And so we also wanted it to have a focus, of course, in environmental justice areas. So I have this map up here, and you can see outlined in green are the two green zones boundaries. Those are areas of Minneapolis that we have focused this work and bringing in the community to really design this project. So green zones, it's a group of neighborhoods, and they face combined effects of environmental pollution, as well as racial, political, and economic marginalization. The two green zones are made up of members of an official advisory board to the city of Minneapolis. So it's a city collaboration. It supports community health, economic development, and the environment. And then overlaid on this map with the green zones is the primary demographic index from the EPA's EJ screen. And so what you can see here in the different block groups is a combination of the percent of low income and percent minority. And those are the two socioeconomic factors that were named in an executive order for environmental justice. I've included this map as well. This comes from EJ screen as well. And this shows PM 2.5 levels in the air in the percentile. And so you can see the areas where we're focusing our efforts and our outreach, obviously our environmental justice issues, showing the information from the slide before, as well as showing the pollution information on this slide. There's a couple other slides or maps I chose not to include in this presentation because they, look very similar to this map and the one before it. And those show from the EJ screen tool the air toxics cancer risk, so the lifetime cancer risk from inhalation of air toxics, as well as the air toxics respiratory hazard index. And not surprisingly, those two maps just look very similar to this map and the one before it. So what we did when we started a year ago is we started meeting with community specific to include the two green zones areas, but of course anybody that lives, works, or plays in Minneapolis has interest in this, and so anybody could be included in this work. And what we did is we had a bunch of community meetings. Those were all virtual at the time. And we got input from the community about what they wanted. So we had this money to spend and we wanted to know how they would want to spend it. what they were interested in, what questions they wanted to answer, and what their concerns were at a very specific level then too. What are the specific areas that they're concerned about? What are the specific sources of pollution that they're concerned about? And a lot of times, we, at the city of Minneapolis, at the MPCA, we of course have ideas of what those sources are. We know the permitted sites in Minneapolis. We know where hazardous waste might be located. We know where we're receiving odor complaints at the city of Minneapolis and things like that. But we also know that there's a lot of information that people in these communities hold that we might not know. And that's just because we haven't properly asked them. So this effort was also to really learn about the lived experience for people that are living in Minneapolis, and in particular in our EJ communities. And so from what we learned from the community, we then went back, we talked to experts at the MPCA to figure out, to develop a plan for answering the questions that the community wanted. And then we presented that plan to them for their final approval and input. And so what we came up with was a way to do community air monitoring. And we were looking at of course, two main things. We're looking at particulates and we're looking at gases. And so we had to work within some of the constraints of the project, mostly the budget. And so what we ended up with from that is that there's a lot of concerns in Minneapolis about particulate pollution. There's a lot of concerns about wood burning smoke and other sources such as what Matt went over at the beginning, that influence particulate pollution in Minneapolis. So what we did with the first set of the funding is we purchased 80 purple air sensors. Purple air sensors measure particulate matter. In particular, we're looking at PM 2.5. And so what we did is we started working with residents in Minneapolis, again, focusing priority in the EJ communities, but residents across Minneapolis, because we do want to get a good representation for the air sensors that we're placing. And so we have 70 purple air sensors that are going to be placed around Minneapolis. Most of those have already been placed. We have a new-ish Green Corps member, Noah, who is on this meeting today. He's been amazing. He's been working really hard to get these sensors placed with residents and then fix any issues that we're having with sensors that had already been placed. So most of these sensors are going in residents' backyards. This one right here is in my backyard on the left. They can be installed on a wood post with a screw. They have zip ties. It's pretty flexible how they can be installed. And so Noah goes out, he works with the residents and he gets them connected to their Wi-Fi and registers the sensors with the Purple Air website and gets them placed. And at the end of my presentation, if I have time, I'm going to change screens and show you all the map of the Purple Air sensors that are in place right now in Minneapolis. The additional 10 Purple Air sensors that are on there are going to be placed with schools. We're doing a partnership project with Jake Swanson, a professor at Minnesota State University. He received a EPA grant to do environmental education in the schools in Minneapolis. So 10 of those sensors will be placed at schools, but the cool thing with it is that those sensors are also going to go home with students throughout the project. So students can take the sensors, they can take them home with them and check what the air quality is at their home, or they could take it, where they play soccer or something like that. And so Jake has a really cool project planned for that. And then all of the data are updated on the Purple Air website, which is a live map, and it shows 10-minute averages of particulates. And then, like I said, I'll pop over to that if I have time at the end. So the other aspect of the project that we're working on right now, with generous help from the MPCA, we will be borrowing 30 AQ mesh units that the Pollution Control Agency owns. We're in the process right now of getting those units sent back to the company that makes them and having them updated with 5 new gas sensors. We're going to be looking at oxides of nitrogen, ozone, carbon monoxide, and total VOCs. And the 5 gases were decided on by the community. Previous work that the MPCA had done, one of the sensors, so it allows for 5 gas sensors in the AQ mesh pod. And they did NO2, NO, O3, CO, and SO2. The results from that work showed that SO2 wasn't a huge concern, but hearing from the community, what they wanted is they want to know, they have a lot of concerns about hazardous air pollutants, HAPs, and what HAPs are, very specific to their location. And so we're sending these back so that we can get them updated with a total VOC sensor. In addition to that, we're still waiting to hear back from an EPA grant that we wrote. And if we do receive that grant, we will be able to really expand on the hazardous air pollutant work that we're doing in Minneapolis, which will also draw from data that we receive from the AQ mesh units on total VOCs. In addition, the AQ mesh units also measure particulate matter. So this work kind of serves 2 points. One, it's the information that the community wants. They have questions about their local air quality, and they want information. And so there is that aspect of it that is just, an education piece, a learning piece, an information piece. But of course, we don't want to just gather data about air quality and not do anything to improve it, because our ultimate goal, of course, is to reduce air pollution and make communities healthier, and of course focus at work in our EJ communities in Minneapolis. So we have several tools in our belt as a local jurisdiction, as a city, to make those improvements. We can work with policy. We have done that in the past. We did a similar community air monitoring project back in 2013 to 2015. And the results from that was focusing on VOCs. The results from that work showed higher levels of tetrachloroethylene, or PERC, which is used in dry cleaners in Minneapolis in the ambient air than we were really expecting. And especially in areas where the residential areas are located, right next to a dry cleaner. And that the results from that led to a policy change in Minneapolis where we banned PERC and dry cleaners, and then we used our Green Cost Share program to help all of those dry cleaners switch away from using PERC. Our Green Cost Share program is exactly that. It's a cost share program, so the businesses are required to they have to pay for part of it themselves. It's not a grant program. I'm not sure why, lawyers, but we have to call it a cost share program. There are certain eligible pollutants. Actually, sorry, let me back up. So our Green Cost Share program focuses in several different areas. It focuses on solar installation. So we have an application for solar installation. It focuses on energy efficiency, which is often switching out to LED lights, but any other energy efficiency projects. And then there's innovative pollution reduction projects. And that's an area that of the Green Cost Share projects that we complete in Minneapolis, the smallest amount is for innovative pollution reduction projects. And we're working really hard to increase our outreach to businesses and industries because we really, really, really want to beef up that portion of the work. When we are looking at innovative pollution reduction work, eligible pollutants to be reduced are VOCs, particulate matter, NOx, SOx, greenhouse gases, and hazardous air pollutants. For pollution reduction projects, there's currently a maximum percentage match of 45%, and the maximum total match amount cannot exceed 100,000. When we do have a policy update, such as when we banned PERC in Minneapolis, and most recently in August, we did pass a new ordinance that requires automotive refinishers to switch to waterborne paint or low VOC paints. They have 4 years to comply with that ordinance. And when we do a policy change like that, we do bump up and offer a greater match from our Green Cost Share program. So right now, the maximum percentage match for automotive refinishers is up to 75%. So we're really looking at this as a business-friendly approach. We want to keep businesses in Minneapolis. They provide a lot of jobs, and we just want to do it in a greener, cleaner way. And with that, I don't know if we have time for questions or if I can pop over to the purple air map.
Yeah, why don't I'll just kind of, you can open the purple air map if you want, and I can kind of start to field questions. I think there was, let's see. Thank you for putting the purple air map in the I think Sean's question is probably a bigger question, but was asking about East Phillips around the diesel truck trips. Does Minneapolis or MPCA have a cumulative air impact study for the Southside Green Zone and models of how much more air pollution might be brought by the additional diesel vehicle traffic?
Yeah, that's a great question. So sorry, I was trying to open up the purple air map and listen to you, Megan, at the same time. Sean, are you talking about the water depot and the new Hiawatha, the public works facility over there? Yes.
Right. Yeah, it's the issue is there is fairly high asthma rates in East Phillips. Some of it is because of a lot of the traffic along Hiawatha, Franklin, and Cedar. But then if you're adding many new truck trips per day because of putting in the water yard for the entire city just in East Phillips, how would they model the extra air pollution, and could they have other things about either trying to prevent idling and or switching these heavy duty trucks to electric faster and all that?
Yeah, so I can, excuse me, I can speak to the last part of that. So I'm not going to address the modeling. I do not do that. That would be at the MPCA side of things. And, you know, the question of, so the data that we're getting from the Community Air Monitoring Project, the MPCA is, they're doing the data analysis for all of that. They're working really hard on getting those data all in one place. And then if they have the capacity to do further analysis showing impacts of increased diesel vehicles in that area, that would be amazing. And then what we're doing actually at the city right now, we're working with our Public Works Department and Environmental Initiative on some of the diesel electrification grant opportunities to try and electrify or get cleaner diesel from the vehicles from in the Public Works Department that would be using that area. Some of the past grants that have been available for that work, our Public Works fleet is actually really quite new. And so they haven't, the diesel fleet, so they haven't actually qualified for some of the federal grants in the past, just because our diesel fleet is new and cleaner. But we are looking into those opportunities to do that, and we would specifically want to focus in that area around the water depot to make sure that those are clean vehicles that are coming in and out of there every day.
And one other opportunity would be because of the bituminous roadways being right there for an asphalt processing plant. They have all their suburban locations, so potentially they could maybe be relocated out of the neighborhood to another locations, you know, outside of the city, so could reduce another big air impact that would maybe balance off a bit of the extra truck traffic, whatever, I don't know.
Yeah. So we're actually working with community planning and economic development right now on some zoning issues in Minneapolis. It is really tricky because we, you know, we can only do what the law says. So we can't For zoning, right now CPED is looking at making it much more restrictive for new businesses that are coming into Minneapolis in those high impact and EJ areas, and restricting use in those high impact areas. However, the businesses that are already there are, I don't like to use the term grandfathered in, but the zoning, but they are grandfathered in, I guess, for lack of a better term. Zoning can't just change it and kick them out. In fact, you know, getting into like what happened with Northern Metals, and obviously that was, you know, from the MPCA side of things and some permit violations, you know, that's a really unlikely scenario, but, you know, it's not something that we can do. Just, you know, tell a business, we don't like what you're doing here and you need to leave the city. There's also a lot of examples from other major cities. I think Milwaukee and Seattle are some of them where they have tried to make businesses like that move out. And it is another it is another racial equity issue, because what they found in those instances where those businesses have left the city is that it reduces a lot of jobs, which is a you know, a similar, you know, racial justice issue. So we're trying to balance that. We don't want businesses to leave Minneapolis. They provide jobs for residents, and often, you know, jobs for low income residents and minority residents. But we want them to do it in a cleaner way.
Thank you, Jenny. Thank you, Sean. I think we can continue this conversation if you want at the end, but if you can, I know we're definitely cutting into Carrie's time. So I want to just quickly, that was the purple air map, and we can definitely talk more about it. For folks not in the chat, if your community, if your city community is interested, definitely please reach out to me. We're in the process of developing an updated air sensor loan program. So, but I want to turn it over to Carrie, the fire marshal at St. Louis Park, who has graciously given some time to be here today. And Carrie, I think you can take it away, and I may just interject every once in a while. If that's okay.
No, that's fine. Yes,
Awesome.
I'm glad you only gave me an hour, because I shouldn't need more than that. So
an hour.
I'm kidding. If I take 10 minutes, it'll be too much.
Thank
so
you
I was
so
asked
much
just to talk about our recreational fire program, and it sounds like it goes against everything we're talking about right now with air quality. But what happened was, back in around 2012, all we did was we would require people to get a permit, and at that time we issued about 600 permits. And what it was is it was an honor system. So people would come in and get a permit. It had safety information on it. And in 2012, we had 79 complaints. And what happened was it went to up the ladder to the city council. And really, it was up to the council what they wanted to do with recreational fires. There was talk of banning recreational fires. And for me, it didn't matter which way they went. I would enforce whatever the council wanted me to. And so they wanted to put some restrictions on it, tighten things up, and then actually enforce the rules, which we had never done. We just provided the rules. And as of today in 2021, we've issued out 957 permits, and I need to explain that a little bit better. And we only have, in 2021, we had 18 complaints. So the complaints have really dropped off. What we did is we went from an annual information sharing every year to people pay a fee for a permanent permit for that address for that person. And we actually have some teeth to it now, where if they're not following the rules, we pull the permit. They're subject to a fine of up to $100, and then they lose their permit and they can't get one for another year. And I think it's been effective, and we still get, like I said, last year was 18 complaints. We still get them. We do go out and enforce the rules that the council wanted us to enforce, and I think it's helped. Okay, do you want me to run through the permit at all? I don't want to take a lot of time. There's a lot of other good information that's being shared.
Yeah, I think it's here for us. I think it's one of those options in terms of actions that we wanted to highlight in terms of best practices. And I know there might be some other similar cities to St. Louis Park. So instead of writing like a model ordinance, MPCA has started to keep track of which cities are requiring a permit as an opportunity to share that information and keep track of residents who do have these permits. So I so appreciate it. I just think it's so interesting that it was a possibility that they could have been banned completely, and this was an opportunity to kind of compromise with that. I think one other thing I just wanted to point out is that I think a lot of folks don't know, but the state fire code that it's highlighted here, the state fire code states that fires shall not be located within 25 feet of any structure on your property. So that includes fences, houses, sheds, or your neighbor's house, and shall not be. And then city ordinance states the fire. So that's where then the city can kind of go deeper or more. Sorry, my kiddo's home. They're going out to play with a friend. So, but then the city can take that next step to be more restrictive if you want, or what works for your community. And so, yeah.
Megan, it's not necessarily 25 feet from a fence, because you have to, there's code language, and I won't bore you with code language. So a fence, usually we don't include in that 25, it has to be at least 10, but St. Louis Park, a lot of the lots are smaller. So you might be 10 feet from your fence, but the neighbor's garage is 5 feet on the other side. So what it did is it put some restrictions on people because of the complaints of smoke, that we need to look at alternative means. And so people who do want to have them, one thing I've been promoting is, if you want a fire pit outside, get a propane one. And we actually have a few in town that are natural gas, tied into the natural gas within the building. And we get rid of not only the smoke issues, but of course, if you got a stack of wood, you could have rodent issues and everything else. So there's more to it than that. So I've seen a lot more propane pits and natural gas pits that are going to be clean burning. So that's great.
Awesome. Any questions that folks might have here?
I know there's one that popped up and I missed it.
Well, the
Yeah,
question
Sean.
was, like, when there's like no wind, it's the worst time to have a backyard fire. So do people have any education to not do it when there's no wind, to blow the smoke away?
So unfortunately, what we look at is that I understand what you mean about the wind. More things that are more important to us are, and I know the meteorologist can talk more about that, I think it was Matt, that you have air inversion type of things where the smoke just doesn't dissipate. But when we have higher wind speeds, the smoke can be blown in your neighbor's house. You can have embers flying. And so we really keep it down, and it's actually more restrictive here in St. Louis Park with the wind speed.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But Sean, that's a great point, that could be another education piece. I think at this point, at least at the MPCA, we've been so focused on really trying to make sure that people have, if they're going to have backyard fires, that they're just burning clean, dry wood, that they're not burning cardboard or anything like that. And I think there can be educational overload. So we've been trying to focus on, if you're going to burn, and the American Lung Association has some great tools out there. The Learn Before You Burn website is really great. Maddie, maybe you can put that in the chat as well, around, keeping it focused to making sure that people know to not have it too close to their neighbors, and or houses for safety issues. And then also really that just the clean, dry wood, or even,
And Megan, we do put something out in the city newsletter every year regarding this. And then the people that do have permits within the city, we send out a postcard in the spring to all of them that we have in our system, so they're aware of the rules again. So we do get that educational component out there.
Awesome. That's huge. Oh, thanks for setting a great model for us. Well,
I have a
think
question really
Yeah.
quick. Are those solo stoves that you see advertised and being added everywhere like really smokeless, and do they really help, you know, those metal canister fire pits?
yeah, Carrie, do you know what she's talking about?
I do. Like we talked about before everybody came on the air with us. I've got one at home. I think it's great, and we use it, you know, maybe 2 times a year. But we haven't really promoted those. Obviously, we want things to be safe, and if we can reduce the air emissions, that would be even better. But that's a good point that we could start promoting those more. And I don't know if with that, if there's something we can do within the code itself that maybe instead of 25 feet from a structure, can we do an amendment and say you're 20 feet from a structure? Because you're really not giving off the same amount of smoke that you are with just an open pit. So
Yeah, we actually, as MPCA, did a fire pit study looking at kind of a traditional fire pit and then the solo and the Brio stoves.
Yep.
We'll be posting that information here soon with our residential wood combustion survey, hopefully at the beginning of next month. That's in my court as well. But that's a good reminder. I can make sure to send that out via the GreenStep Cities and Tribal Nations listserv. That folks might be able to see that. Basically what we found is really good controlled fires don't put out a lot of emissions, but that's the challenge is certainly making sure that you're just burning clean dry wood and it's small pieces, not a whole tree. So, and then not letting it smolder. So we can dig into that. Maybe that could be a whole nother session sometime.
yeah, and Megan and Kristen, if you have some ideas, I'm on the state chief's fire code committee, and we're going to be starting our meetings. We had a preliminary meeting, just a kind of a meet and greet, and we're going to be starting to have our meetings for the next code cycle. And maybe this is something we can look at from a fire safety, and we can also kind of tie in air quality. I understand there's 2 different things we're working with, but it might be a conversation worth having, and I can bring it up for discussion within that group.
Oh, excellent. Thank you so much, Carrie. That we'll definitely be in contact then. That's great. I think we probably should move on to Samantha Connolly. And I think I can't remember who's sharing. Oh, got it. Perfect. Sam, you're ready to go. Awesome.
Yeah.
So yeah. Why don't you just launch right into it?
Okay. So I am Sam Connolly. I work at the MPCA in the Small Business Assistance Program. And Megan asked me to talk about some alternative landscaping equipment, just, another thing to think about with outdoor air quality. And so I'm going to spend a couple minutes talking about kind of the benefits of switching from gas operated equipment to battery operated, and kind of walk through some examples of success that I've seen in switching to these alternative landscaping equipment through awarded grants through the MPCA in the last couple of years. So, kind of with the theme of what's been going on today. So, gas-powered landscaping equipment is a significant source of VOCs and other air emissions, particularly in urban areas. And a fact that I found is that the average gas-powered push mower produces 14.76 pounds of air pollution in an hour, and that is the same amount as driving your car for 200 miles. And these pollutants are harmful to the operators as well as the community that they're operating in. So switching to battery or propane-powered equipment can cut air emissions and protect your employees from pollutants and engine noise, and it can help, save money and safeguard community health, which I will talk about in the next slide here, some more of the benefits and why you should consider switching. They are typically lighter in weight, and this makes them easier to use. The ability to carry them across distances into multiple locations seems to be easier. They typically now, especially with how batteries and everything, technology is just advancing. They seem to have equal performance to their gas competitors in many applications. So often a 20-minute charge of a battery the equipment can last for hours. They have been seen to save money as you don't need to buy gas anymore, or things like belts, spark plugs, filters. There's less maintenance. They are also quieter for both the user and the surrounding neighborhoods. And with the quieter, they are also safer for the user. They eliminate the engine exhaust, reduce odors and respiratory effects. There is no more, pulling the cord or lift related injuries. There's less of those. And then again, kind of tying it back with community health and, reducing air pollution to the surrounding communities where these are operating in. So lots of benefits, as you can see. And some examples that we, have done some grants for, basically all sorts of equipment, chainsaws, string trimmers, pole saws, blowers, backpacks and handheld, mowers, both the push and the riding, snow blowers. And I put on here batteries and chargers. That's one thing to, when you're considering switching, again, technology has just been advancing, and batteries, if you stick with the same company and the same line, you can typically switch and put that battery in the different equipment, so you can save some money there. But maintaining batteries and having extra batteries and chargers is definitely something that we have heard makes the equipment run as effectively as the gas operated equipment. And it's kind of blurry, but just wanted to kind of touch on the success that we were able to see in some of the grants that the MPCA had from 2018 to 2021. The chart on the left-hand side of Minnesota, the kind of teal dots are where we had some of these grantees for this grant program. And there were, I think, 168 total over those 3 years. 121 of those were in EJ or environmental justice areas. The estimated VOC reductions from these grants were 361 tons, which is pretty awesome to hear. And to kind of give a little bit of background, so some of these grantees kind of came through multiple rounds and ended up switching over, all of their equipment. And then there were some smaller cities or businesses that did it in one round and just kind of wanted to test the waters and were able to, switch out a couple of their gas powered and, switch over. And I did some digging, and I think the average grant was around $2,000 and it required a 50% match. This pretty much allowed them to purchase, again, on average, 5 to 8 pieces of equipment, plus batteries and chargers and attachments. So they were able to utilize our grant to get, whatever they needed. And one example I thought kind of shows how affordable this is becoming is a small city purchased the Milwaukee brand and got a 4-tool combo. So it was a string trimmer, a blower, a hedge trimmer, and a chainsaw, and a 2-pack battery for right around $1,000 at their local Home Depot. And they I saw all these receipts of all the grants coming in, and it definitely seems like there's a lot of sales or deals to get multiple tools and attachments, or to get an additional battery if you're buying, a certain number. So stores seem to be making it more feasible to obtain these equipment. So that is a positive thing. And the other thing I wanted to point out on this slide, or just in general with these grants, is, we had cities, small businesses, school districts applying for these, and several we heard back from, and they were more than willing to talk about the success they've had and just the benefits that they saw from switching to this equipment. And they were more than willing to talk to any city or anyone that's considering this switch. So I'd be happy to connect anyone to those grantees to kind of talk about that success. And the next slide here, Just some quick quotes of, what we heard from grantees. They enjoyed the use of them. They were able to complete their tasks with, having enough batteries on hand. And another benefit, the noise of the equipment is far less. And I did mention snow blowers, but this is something, we are in Minnesota. We're snow for several months. This is something else to just consider. We didn't really see a lot of these through the grants, but again, with these alternative snow blowers, less noise, less odors, safer for the user. So just something to keep in mind. And then just wanted to tie in a couple of other small business assistance that is available. So the first one being refrigeration emission reduction grants. So many of the chemicals that power our refrigeration systems can contribute to climate change or damage the ozone layer when they leak. We've had a couple of rounds of these grants, and we are anticipating having another one for refrigeration replacements and upgrades in the first half of 2023. We have improved air quality grants, and this is funding to help small businesses, government agencies, educational institutions, and other organizations upgrade equipment and processes or switch to cleaner products that will reduce air pollution. And there is also a dry cleaner cost share program to help dry cleaner businesses switch away from PERC, which will be banned in Minnesota as a dry cleaning solvent starting in 2026. And just sticking to this theme of air quality and improving it, specifically for small businesses, we have created a virtual training to get small businesses to start thinking about climate change and obstacles they may be facing and what they can do to reduce their emissions and adapt for the future. And that is very quick overview of, why you should switch or consider alternative landscaping equipment.
Awesome. Thank you, Sam. There was one question in the chat, and there's excellent conversation certainly continuing around the smoke or backyard fires, but does MPCA plan on releasing more alternative landscaping equipment grant funding?
Well, I feel like you know the answer better than I.
The quick answer is no. We're trying to find some more bigger sources for that funding, but no, we just are not set up to handle a lot of small grants. And so it really we're really excited to see the results, but we want to find a more sustainable way to do that. So not in the near future. We're hoping in the longer term that we'll have something available, but TBD.
And with I see a question about the air quality improvement grants. I know there's one open right now, and I think we're planning on another either end of this year, early 2023. And there is an email, and I can put it in the chat that you can, and Krista may have already done that, but you can sign up for kind of a news or a update when there are new grants available. So, yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, jump in.
Do we have time for one quick question, I guess?
Yeah.
That statistic about fuel use or emissions from landscaping equipment, was that like an average of 4 and 2 cycle small engines, or was that like an estimate of, I don't know. I'm asking because I have some neighbors with 2 cycle lawn equipment, and I'm like, hey, update those, please.
That's a good question. I didn't create that statistic.
Yeah, sure.
I found it. I could definitely find the answer, but yeah, I'm not sure.
It's not a huge deal, but it would be fun if I could go over there and be like, hey, did you know when you mow your lawn, it's like driving 200 miles?
I think the EPA came up with that. And so I think we could probably dig into it a little bit more, but it's a widely shared statistic. I know that.
Awesome. Well, I will also turn my purple air out towards the street and use that also.
There you go. Yes, those can also pick up fine particles from lawn mowing equipment as well, certainly. I want to do, this has been so incredible, and thank you, Sam. Also, we had talked to some businesses and some cities, and lots of folks are on vacation today and the rest of this week. So thank you so much for bringing all that in to represent. But I think most of those cities are listed on our website, right? I believe so. If there's a similar city
They were.
to you, oh, they were. They're not anymore.
Yeah, with our update, our website update, apparently that got removed, but I certainly can ask for that list and send it out. But yeah, I was couldn't find it. That's why I made that map, because I couldn't find the list.
Oh, thank you. Well, or if maybe you'll hear of a neighboring city, certainly feel free to reach out to them if you want to hear about their success stories. We have been here. It feels like it's been gushing about how great these programs are. I did, as we kind of continue this conversation and kind of Q&A as we continue. I did Gabriel just popped in. Gabriel's from MnTap. And so Gabriel, I don't know if you want to just say a little bit about what you all can offer cities in particular. Oh, yay. And a slide.
Yeah, a quick slide. This is our team. Thank you so much. Like Megan said, I'm Gabrielle Martin, an associate engineer at MnTap, and we're a group of engineers, and we can help any business in the state of Minnesota at no cost. And that also includes if there are city buildings where you would like an audit or something like that, we can work on that. In terms of air pollution, we have done a lot of work with dry cleaners on the perk thing, and we can do work on refrigeration. Two areas that I wanted to bring up really quickly are paint and maintenance shops. So anywhere that you guys are doing painting, there could be opportunity to switch from solvent-based paints to water-based or powder paint. And this will reduce air pollution. Also, having a spray gun cleaner or recirculating parts will help increase your transfer efficiency and just get more life out of the paint that you do have to use. And then on the maintenance shop side, one area to really pay attention to is degreasing, anywhere that's done. Choosing degreasing formulas that have low HAPs and low VOCs can be really, really helpful. Some products can look nearly identical on the shelves, and then they have radically different compositions. One of them could be terrible for the environment and one of them could be just fine. So yeah, if anybody has any questions or wants to know more about that, feel free to just reach out to our team. We are always available. Like the slide says, confidential, non-regulatory, no cost. Yeah, there's our contact info. If there are any questions.
Thanks so much. I just wanted to include MnTap as well, because if you may have a business in your city that you're just not sure what to do, this might be a great point them in the direction of MnTap. And I think that confidential piece is really important to a lot of businesses. Mm-hmm. And so we can't find out who they talk to or anything like that. So I think as kind of a catch-all, if you're concerned about a business having some air pollution issues or whatnot, I think MnTap is a great catch for so much here. So thank you so much, Gabrielle, for being here. Jenny from Minneapolis says, I don't know what we would do without MnTap. Exactly.
Oh, thank you so much. That's so sweet.
Yes.
Yes. Yay,
So
MnTap.
Other questions? Yay, MnTap.
Yeah, we've got about a couple more minutes if there's any other burning questions or resources that didn't get shared today. You want to highlight anyone on the call?
Awesome. Just to kind of I think we might have lost a couple of folks yet, but if there are folks, we have kind of been toying with looking at cohort groups of GreenStep cities who may want to work on kind of 2 areas of wood burning in particular around recreational fires, which may be a little bit more focused in the metro cities, but maybe some concern in greater Minnesota. And then a cohort potentially started around heating, because I know in greater Minnesota, but also some in the metro, folks often at the cities get complaints around different heating devices or whatnot. And so if folks are interested in that, we probably aren't going to do a whole lot quite yet, but if folks are interested in either one of those cohorts, please let me know. We'll start to gather those. It will probably be my replacement person, but we can start gathering those folks together and because we at the MPCA want to do things that would help cities, and we've kind of taken a couple of cracks at things and said maybe this isn't actually what people need. So we want to find out what resources people need to help in their cities, because at least around wood burning, that's where the regulatory authority is not at MPCA. It is at the city and county level. So please feel free to contact me. And I guess I'm mostly saying that also for folks who watch the recording.
Yes. Yeah, get in touch with Megan. And if anything more, formal gets shared, we will be sure to send that out to our listserv as well. So just to wrap things up really quick, back again, actions related to outdoor air quality in the GreenStep Cities and Tribal Nations program are listed here. Again, for your information. So if you've done projects and you want to share document what you worked on, please go find your login information and get that in there. If you're interested in doing one of these projects, these are a good place to start to get some additional guidance and links to all of the resources. We will be sending out the video recording of this workshop, as well as links to resources and contact information to y'all. It might take me a couple of weeks, but you'll get it. And then just a quick reminder here, our next workshop's coming up. Our next one will be November 16th about biological integrity. So talking a little bit more about all of the flora and fauna that make up our communities and how important it is to understand what's there, even the smallest littlest tiniest bits. So thank you, Megan, for helping to coordinate this topic workshop. And thank you to all of our speakers for sharing information and successes and everything that you have. I look forward to seeing what y'all are able to do at the local level and even at the statewide level, since we have a lot of PCA folks here. And thank you to everyone who attended, and we will see you next time.